What's up, biology students? Mr. Holloway here. Today's video is the last in a series of 4 videos about 4 really important organic macromolecules. Today, we're going to learn about the structure and function of proteins. Protein molecules are the workforce of the cell. They are the molecules that do most of the important jobs that need to be done. The job that a particular protein molecule does is determined by the shape it takes when it is constructed by the cell. Here we see a few three-dimensional representations of some of the many protein molecules known to exist. Our cells make literally thousands of different protein molecules, each one structured to do a specific job inside of our cells. And the jobs that protein molecules do inside of our cells are very, very important. Among the more important functions performed by proteins are regulating chemical reactions, fighting disease, transporting substances into and out of our cells, providing structure and support, and carrying oxygen through the body. This last one is performed by a protein called hemoglobin. When we inhale, oxygen diffuses from our lungs into our bloodstream where it binds with the protein molecule hemoglobin. This way, the oxygen can be transported through our bodies in our bloodstream and can be dropped off at cells that require this oxygen along the way. This is just one of many examples of the important jobs done by protein molecules inside of our body. Just like carbohydrates and nucleic acids, proteins are made of numerous, small but similar building blocks. The monomers of a protein are called amino acids, and there are over 20 different kinds of amino acids. All amino acids are identical except for this part, the so-called R groups or side groups highlighted in this figure. This R group determines what kind of amino acid we are dealing with, and interactions between different side groups determines the overall shape of a protein molecule. As you can see, these different amino acids have different properties depending on the side group it contains. Some are positively charged, others are negatively charged. Some are polar, and some are nonpolar. As you might imagine, a positively charged amino acid might be attracted to a negatively charged amino acid, and two positively charged amino acids might repel each other. It's these kind of interactions that cause a protein molecule to get folded and bent into its final shape. Our bodies can manufacture most of these amino acids internally, but 9 of these amino acids must be consumed in our diet because our bodies are not able to manufacture them. These are called the essential amino acids because they are an essential part of our diet. Without them, our bodies would not be able to build certain protein molecules. Most meat products contain all 9 of these essential amino acids, but you can also get them by eating a combination of beans and corn. Whenever you get them, it's very important to make sure that you get all of them. Amino acid monomers join together in long chains like beads on a string. In this figure, each colorful bead represents a single amino acid, and here we can see that R group or side group that determines which specific amino acid we have. This long chain is a polymer that we call a polypeptide. A chain of amino acids is called a polypeptide because amino acids bond to other amino acids with something called a peptide bond. The prefix poly means many or multiple. By itself, a polypeptide chain is not capable of much, but then again, we're not quite done building our protein yet. Proteins are said to have 4 levels of structure, and the specific order of the amino acids is only the first level of structure. Next, the chain gets coiled and folded as a result of hydrogen bonding, much like how water molecules stick together as a result of hydrogen bonding. After that, this coiled and folded polypeptide is folded again, and that's the 3rd level of structure. Finally, this bent, folded, and coiled polypeptide that we've got sticks together with a few more bent, folded, and coiled polypeptides, and this is the thing that we call a protein molecule. Each individual polypeptide makes up a subunit of this larger protein molecule. Depending on the order of the amino acids involved, this bending, folding, and coiling, and combining can play out in many, many different ways, and this is why proteins can take on so many different shapes. Remember, this shape is what determines what job this protein will do when it is completed. In our video about lipids, we saw this figure here of the lipid bilayer that makes up our cell membranes. You might recall that these big green molecules embedded in the membranes are proteins. Proteins embedded in the membrane Proteins embedded in the cell membrane like this are often involved in the transport of molecules into and out of our cells, thereby regulating and controlling what substances are allowed in and what substances are not. This can happen in a few different ways. The first image shows what's called a protein channel, which is simply open and allows molecules of the right shape and size to pass freely back and forth. The shape of the protein determines what kinds of molecules can move back and forth through the channel. This second image shows a protein pump, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. This pump requires energy in order to forcefully move a particular kind of molecule from one side of the membrane to the other. Once again, the shape of the protein determines what kind of molecules will be pumped from one side to the other. Other proteins found in the cell membrane are called receptors, and these proteins receive chemical messengers, something like a hormone, sent by another cell in the body. And by receiving this message, the protein is able to transmit that message into the cell in order to make the cell perform some important function. Some proteins help our body to identify and fight invading pathogens or disease-causing agents like bacteria or viruses. These pathogens have proteins embedded on their surfaces. These surface proteins are called antigens. Proteins called antibodies are used by our cells to identify invading pathogens, and when they come into contact with an antigen of just the right shape, they stick to it and initiate an immune response that will hopefully destroy the invader. But sometimes this also works against us. For example, when a person requires an organ transplant or a blood transfusion, there is always a chance that the body will reject this transplant or transfusion because the antibodies recognize the transplant as foreign and flag it to be attacked by the immune system, just as they would for a bacteria or virus. Protein is most often associated with diet and with building muscle tissue. Many dietary supplements claim to help a person build muscle mass by giving them a large dose of protein. As a result, we often inappropriately refer to muscle tissue as being made of protein, but this is completely false. Muscle tissue is made of cells, just like our brain is made of cells, and just like our skin is made of cells. All cells contain protein molecules, and muscle cells are no exception. However, muscle cells and skin cells are quite different, and muscle cells do contain many specialized proteins that help muscle cells do their job. So while it is not accurate to say that muscle is made of protein, it would be entirely appropriate to say that muscle cells contain a high concentration of many different kinds of protein molecules. For example, the filaments found inside our muscle cells are proteins, and these particular proteins, called actin and myosin, are specialized to pull past one another, resulting in muscle contraction. Every muscle cell in our body contains filaments, which work together to help our muscles function properly, whether these muscles are moving our legs, pumping our heart, or helping to push food through the digestive system. Many proteins also function as enzymes. Enzymes help our bodies thousands of chemical reactions that occur inside our bodies every day. Enzymes help us to regulate these reactions by acting as catalysts, and a catalyst is any substance that helps to lower the amount of energy required to start a chemical reaction. Therefore, catalysts make it easier for a reaction to get started and help these reactions to happen faster as a result. Like all proteins, the shape of an enzyme determines its function. In this case, the shape of an enzyme determines what kind of reaction this enzyme can catalyze, and each chemical reaction that occurs in our body has a specific enzyme that regulates that reaction. Enzymes work by providing a location for a chemical reaction to take place, and this location is called the active site of an enzyme. The molecules that fit into this active site are called substrates. Enzymes and their substrates fit together very precisely, just like a lock and key. And just like a key won't open a lock if it's got the wrong shape, an enzyme cannot catalyze a reaction if it has the wrong shape. Put that lock into that key, or rather, that substrate into the active site of an enzyme, and this combination is called an enzyme-substrate complex. By binding together like this, the enzyme is able to control the chemical reaction that takes place, helping it to get started by reducing the amount of energy required for this reaction to happen. In the case of this figure, the enzyme sucrase has an active site with a shape that matches the shape of a sucrose molecule. Sucrose, which is The substrate involved in this particular reaction is a polysaccharide, a sugar made of one glucose monomer bonded to one fructose monomer. And the enzyme sucrase helps our body to take this polysaccharide apart into its individual monomers. We can see how this process works if we follow the arrows in this figure. First, sucrose binds to the active site of the enzyme, forming an enzyme-substrate complex. A chemical reaction occurs, and sucrose is converted into the final products of this reaction, glucose and fructose. The products break loose, and the enzyme is ready to go again. The function of a cell is determined largely by the protein molecules manufactured by that cell, and protein molecules do most of the actual work inside of any given cell in our bodies. They defend us against disease and help transport nutrients into and out of our cells. They also help us to remove waste from our cells and regulate the chemical reactions that occur inside of our cells. They also provide important structures, especially in muscle cells. All proteins are made of amino acids, and because proteins are so important to our lives, it is equally important to make sure that we eat a diet that will provide us with all the amino acids we need to build the many different kinds of proteins upon which our lives depend. And, as you can tell by this image, the structure of some proteins is as beautiful as it is complex. And with that, I will bring our video to a close. Remember, you can go back and watch this video as many times as you need until you feel like you understand what these protein molecules are all about.